Israel satisfy its own ego. I mean, I'm very, very pity to the American people for having leaders like Joe Biden.
If they have not learned from their past mistake, they will never learn.
Are we already doing enough? Has the government done enough? Has Anwar done enough?
So I think on the part of the government, we need to have a pure professional advisors. I would say the hardcore supporters of the Palestinian struggle.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another roundup of weekly news on Beyond the Headlines. I'm Hazwin Hassan, and on this week's show, I'm joined with our op-ed editor, Azman Hamid. Welcome, Azman. Thank you for being on today's and this week's show. Now, in this episode, Beyond the Headlines, we'll be talking about something that many Malaysians feel very strongly about. Now, obviously evident from the throngs of people joining rallies showing the support for the Palestinian cause. So we are obviously going to talk about none other than the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. There are, of course, several things to talk about when it comes to discussing this war that has plagued the region for decades, and if you go all the way back, centuries even. And in light of the current situation, if we go back at least 2 weeks ago to the October 7th attacks, from when this started, there are some really pressing issues that I personally believe warrant more attention. So for that, I am delighted to say that we have just the right person to help navigate this discussion. Let me introduce, please, our guest for today, Dr. Ahmad El Muhammadi, a security and counterterrorism expert from International Islamic University Malaysia, or IIUM for short, from the International Institute of Islamic Thought and Civilization, ISTAC. Welcome, Dr. Ahmad, to the show. Thank you for coming.
Yes, my pleasure.
Now, before I get you to unpack this rather delicate situation that is that we see is happening and being faced by Palestinians and Israelis in the region, I would like to first get Azman, perhaps to sort of bring us through briefly what transpired, the current situation now. What triggered the current situation that we have now? What was it that started this most recent conflict going back 2 weeks ago?
Okay, thank you, Hazwin. For any keen observer of the Middle East affairs or Middle East development situation, especially the Israeli and Palestinian issue, it doesn't start with the October 7th attack. Of course, it is, as they say, the worst attack against Israel in the history, in the Jewish nation's history. But let's not dwell too much on that October 7th attack, because I believe since the establishment of the Israeli state in 1948, this type of event has occurred from time to time. It is a show of Palestinians' resistance, of their wish to be recognized of their rights and dignity, and while all this time, I would say that they have not been ably helped by those by the international community towards the aim of having an independent Palestinian state. As for Israel itself, as for the Jewish state, this for them is another reminder of the Palestinians' wish, I just said just now, that they need to recognize, accept, and find a solution for. Why are they waiting over 75 years now to find a solution? No, it's not that we haven't had negotiations all this while. But why does Israel need to continue the one word that I would say, occupation, over 75 years?
Perhaps, Dr. Ahmed, you can expand further on that. 75 years of occupation, and you have nation's peoples, if you like, being subjugated to this occupation by another state completely. So if you sort of briefly can sort of bring us back beyond the 75 years.
Yeah, thank you very much, Azwin. I think it has been explored just now by Azman. Okay, it is, you rightly say, Azman, that the event of October 7, it is not just like a one-shot event, and therefore it is continued to happen until now. It is actually a continuity or a continuation from what happened maybe 50, 60 years ago. I think even much earlier. So if we want to understand the current conflict, definitely we have to look at back in history what happened before the creation of Israel and after the creation of Israel. So in history, I mean, briefly, we can see that before the creation of Israel, the Jewish people has been roaming around the world, and they've been living in Europe and many parts of the world, I mean, scattered all over the place. So there is a gentleman in Europe by the name Theodor Herzl, who has an idea. He said that the Jewish destiny would be like this forever unless we create our own states. And that state is Israel. So therefore, he wrote books. He wrote a kind of a very short writings entitled Jewish States, in which he explained, I think it is written in 1912, or I mean, it's a very, very old manuscript, explaining about the aspiration of Jewish people to have its own state. And the question would be, where is it that the state would be? So he consulted many people, and finally, with the blessings of the British government, they said that we are waiting for the death of the Ottoman Empire. Perhaps we can give you a piece of land known as Palestine to you, and therefore your problem will get resolved. And of course, if you look at what happened to Jewish people during World War II, they were massacred by the Nazi. 6 million of them were dead because of the concentration camp, and they've been shot and they've been massacred in Europe. So in order to redeem so-called the guilt of the European, they say that, fine, we try to find some place for you, and then you can reside in there, and then create a state out of that. So therefore, through Balfour Declaration, British agreed to give to the Jewish people a piece of land. They call it, okay, this is a homeland. It is not a state, they call it homeland. And we can see that there, the British is also very careful not to name the place as a state. They name it as a homeland, the Jewish homeland. If you look at carefully in the Balfour Declaration, it stated that homeland, the Jewish homeland, that is Palestine. So the Jewish people, after the British got the mandate from the international community, because this piece of land became a kind of contestation between the superpowers during that time. The French want this, and the Russian wants that. Yes. The British want that also. So finally, say that, hey, nobody will get this one, but let us put under the international mandate. And the British was given that mandate by the international community, and they administer that place. However, they hand over this one to the Jewish people, and the Jewish people start flowing in, and they stay, and they create the state out of that. And as a result of this, there is a strong resistance from the neighboring countries, and they go and fight the Jewish army, and they lost the war many times. I think it's happened in the independence, War of Independence, and later on the Six Days War, Yom Kippur War, and so on. Yes. However, the conclusion from all this conflict, the Israel army, IDF, was prevailed, and they controlled the Palestine. So from that, then the space for the Palestinian people shrinking from time to time until today. If you look at from the beginning, from the 48 until now, it's become like West Bank on the other side and the Gaza on the other side. They literally cut them off, divide and rules principle, right. One in the West Bank, the other one in Gaza, and they control Palestinian, and the land become smaller and smaller until today. As the Palestinian, they feel that this is something unacceptable, because not only that you reside in here, they know that there are Jewish people there during that time, but they coexist together. But now they're coming over to Palestine, right. rule the place and kick the Palestinian out. This is not acceptable for the Palestinian. They start to fight, and one of the group that come out out of this is PLO, is Palestinian Liberation Organization, and also Hamas, which is actually being accused as involving in this kind of massacre in the October 7. So that was the briefly historical side of this.
Right.
Yeah.
It is indeed, and I think for a lot of people, perhaps only just learning this, I think this is going to be very beneficial to understand the real depth of the history behind the occupied territories in Palestine by Israel. Now, sort of fast forwarding on to today.
To this,
Okay, so something more current now. Following the October 7th attacks, and then now you've got the continued attacks and retaliatory attacks from Israel. The latest that has come out of that is calls by the international community, the UN namely, to call for a ceasefire resolution.
Yeah.
So the General Assembly actually voted overwhelmingly in support of a ceasefire resolution. But that was not possible because it was vetoed by none other than the US, right? So, and this happened just a few days ago, and they vetoed this unanimous decision by the General Assembly. And in fact, even following that, Russia proposed another resolution, perhaps not a full-on ceasefire, but still calling for a humanitarian truce,
yeah.
right? But leaving out the total ceasefire resolution aside. Now, with this, and this isn't the first time, obviously, the U.S. intervention as one of the Security Council members in stopping from something like this from happening. And in fact, if we look back at some numbers, the U.S. has used its veto power at least 34 times to block the UN Security Council resolutions that were critical of Israel. So looking at this trend, is it ever likely that a two-state solution, which is what we're all hoping for, would ever happen?
There are several aspects that we can unpack from your question. Number one is the logic of American support for Israel. We have to look at from the American point of view, what is the logic that we as American government especially need to support Israel all out. The degree of support has varied across presidency, and you can see the difference, for example, during Obama's presidency. Obama gave a little space for the Palestinians to breathe and to have their own say on the world stage. We also can see the similar thing during the presidency of Clinton administration, the one that sponsored Oslo Accord. And but after that, we do not see much. However, when it comes to this situation, Biden has provided undivided support, unshakable support to Israel, and whatever Israel says, how ridiculous it is, but it is being endorsed by the United States. So the mutual dependency between these two states is unquestioned. However, the world was so surprised when we look at American is so-called the champion of human rights, and then the rule of law has done something like this. It is very unprecedented. So what is the logic? There are a few things that we have to consider when we talk about American behavior. One is realism. American belief in whatever you do, it must be based on the realistic calculation of your interest. So it is in American interest to support Israel at this juncture. It is not only to support moral support, but also material support, in terms of financial support, monetary support, military support, and they give it this to Israel. The reason is to ensure that the Israels continue to exist, survive, because we have to remember Israel is sitting in the middle of all the Arab nations. If the all Arab nation gathered and bomb Israel, they're going to be non-existent. Israel would be wiped out from the face of the earth, just like Iranians say. So America need to support that in order to maintain, because Israel is the only ally that American can rely on militarily.
Can I add to your argument,
Yeah.
Doctor? You see, people point out that the differences between Ukraine and Palestine when Russia invade Ukraine, the U.S. What did the U.S. do?
Yeah.
Oh, Russia is an invader. You can't support. You must fight against the invader. But when it comes to Palestine, and this is not the first time. This has been years and years, but Palestine is given a different treatment. So, again, it is, to me, it's regrettable. However, realism is a policy of the U.S. that they can simply, kind of couldn't care less attitude when it comes to protecting Israeli interests. I mean, it is now the 21st century where we are into the, what you call that, the 5G kind of era, artificial intelligence and all that. But this different treatment when it comes to the two issues is not a great publicity for America, for the human rights, so-called human rights champion.
I agree. I mean, it's a gross show of biasness, really, and hypocrisy.
Yeah, the world can see what the American did right now. I mean, we don't have to tell that any sane individual, any sober-minded man who care for the humanity, who care for justice, who care for a human being, cannot accept this. I mean, we have like very uneducated people who look at this. This is not something that. So what Israeli did is actually something which is beyond exceeding the humanitarian laws and also the human rights and so on. They don't really care about that. But most importantly, Israel satisfied its own ego. And I think the other factor that we have to understand, American psyche, is just to inform or to demonstrate to us that not only that they are dependents in terms of the military and also the ally in the Middle East, but the both leaders at the point. I mean, I'm very, very pity to the American people for having leaders like Joe Biden, because his decision actually put Americans at stakes. Americans' life at stake, because we have a lot of American who is not supportive of what the government did. There are State Department officials who resigned because of this, because they know what kind of thing that American did, and in the whole world they don't stand a chance of defending what American did now, and then Israel as well. To understand what's going on in Israel at this point, we have to understand the psyche of Benjamin Netanyahu. If you look at in history, Benjamin Netanyahu was the most extremist politician in Israeli politics. Actually, many people call him the warmonger.
Right.
There are at least 3 people call him warmonger. Ami Ayalon, the former Shin Bet, that is special branch, I mean equivalent to special branch here in Malaysia, they call him the one who actually promote war between the Arab and the Israeli. Ephraim Halavi is the former director of Mossad. And Ehud Barak, the former prime minister of Israel himself.
Mossad being the intelligence unit,
the
right?
external intelligence of Israel. Even to the taste of Mossad, Benjamin Netanyahu is too much. And he went to the extent of, I mean, if somebody else sitting as a prime minister right now in Israel, I don't think that they take the route taken by Benjamin Netanyahu. What it should be done at this point is actually call for a ceasefire and then discuss or call for negotiation for the release of hostage. I think what the Israeli is doing right now is actually following the script of what Hamas wanted them to do. Hamas know it very well that if you attack Israel, Israel is going to come hard on them. And that's exactly what happened. And Hamas, of course, they're well prepared. They are well prepared they are following script of Hamas one by one, not even a single thing. They skip the script. So until now, they continue to bomb. So Israel, even though you look at from the military standpoint, Israel is having a kind of superiority, superior military. I mean, in terms of the military, we can say that, no one can defeat Israel in terms of military. They bomb people and so on. And the Hamas bomb is very small. So militarily, Israeli is winning. But if you look at from the PR perspective, Israel is losing. Every bomb drop in Gaza, that is 100% is going to magnify the importance of Hamas. They want to eliminate Hamas. Hamas is not a group. Hamas is an ideology. The more you try to kill them, the more support. Now there is a support for Hamas globally. How can you kill it? Why? Because Israel lose the PR battle. They might lose the military battle. They might bomb the Palestinian out of it and become the desert. But Israel right now is losing badly on the PR side. And I think America, in the case of vetoing the resolution by the United Nations, I think is going to affect the American image and stature in the world. And I think right now you can see that the Chinese president, they actually appear to be more on the superior ground right now, morally speaking, humanitarian perspective or standpoint, because they talk about that. But that is the opposite what happened in the case of America.
The other, I think one small comment that I can make is, you must also remember that the present Israeli government is the most right-wing government ever in Israeli history.
Right.
Yes.
So one can cynically say, in a way, this is like what Hamas did on the October 7th. Actually, is a gift to
Exactly.
Benjamin Netanyahu, because his position, actually, he was faced with judicial controversy, where every week there's a protest against him. So when Hamas did what they did, it's a gift to Netanyahu to just like sort of take over and get people to focus on another thing altogether.
Right.
But at the Palestinians'
Would I be
expense.
correct in characterizing the attacks from Hamas on October 7th that triggered this ongoing conflict, right? Would I be correct in saying that it was just an attempt to provoke?
Provoke Israel.
Yes.
Exactly.
Just to bring on that reaction, to elicit that the response that they have already given.
I think there are two things that we can see from what's going on. What Hamas gained from this October 7. If you look at before, there was during the Trump administration, Trump sponsored the Abrahamic Accord, and because of Abrahamic Accord, some Arab countries actually go for normalization of relation with Israel. We have UAE, we have Qatar, and we have some other countries go for normalization. And in 2024, Saudi Arabia is going towards to normalization of relation with Israel. So if you look at the nature of normalization, they have a good diplomatic relation with Israel. There would be a tourism, there would be an interaction of people, there would be a movement of people, a movement of goods, economic relation, people's relation, and then diplomatic relations. However, Palestinians never been consulted when it comes to normalization. So if you are the Palestinian, you feel that you're left out in the whole things. And not only that, the agenda of Palestinian two-state solution is not on the table. So if Saudi Arabia moved toward normalization of relation with Israel, that would spell the death of this two-state solution. And therefore, this Palestinian struggle is no longer a big agenda, it's become an afterthought. So the Hamas understand this. If Saudi Arabia move on to normalization, some Muslim countries might do that, and therefore our struggle would be worthless. He said that we got to do something about this. I think that what actually triggers the October, and Hamas is well prepared. So when they start attacking Israel, so Israel retaliates. Now what they will get? Now one, they kill normalization initiative. There is no more talks about normalization of Saudi Arabia. The Saudis suspended all talks and discussion about normalization. Number two, Palestinian struggle is back on the table. And that's what Hamas want. And not only that, he gained another plus point, that is Hamas managed to humiliate Israel in the whole world. Why? Because Israel has a leader who is act impulsively. I would say I study Prime Minister of Israel from the beginning, from the Golda Meir and then Ben Gurion. I would say the current Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, is the most impulsive Prime Minister. Because I remember this what happened in Amman, I think, in 2005. There was an attack by Hamas in Jerusalem, in Tel Aviv, the suicide bombing. Benjamin Netanyahu, during that time, was the Prime Minister. He asked the director of Mossad, Danny Yatom, the director of Mossad during that time, he said, who initiated, who sponsored, and who asked these kind of things to happen? Danny Yatom answered, there is a guy in Amman, his name is Khalid Mash'al. And he said that, go and kill him. Whereas a week earlier, Danny Yatom was in Amman assuring King Hussein there wouldn't be a kind of any operation on the Jordanian soil, assuring the king of Hussein. However, after 1 week, they attacked Khalid Mash'al. Not only they attacked Khalid Mash'al, their 2 agents were arrested by Jordanian authorities, and 2 of them are seeking refuge in the Israeli embassy in Amman. It was a great failure, and to the embarrassment of Benjamin Netanyahu. Not only that, he was forced by the American to give the antidote to Khalid Mash'al, and of course, within 24 hours, the antidote arrived in Amman, administered to Khalid Mash'al. He survived until today. But the point is, what the King Hussein commented after the incident, he said that it's just like you invited a guest to come to your house and stay there, and you found out that he raped your daughter. This is the attitude of disregard of the courtesy, kind-heartedness of the people that actually rendered to him. This is the behavior of Benjamin Netanyahu. So when he reacted to the attack of October 7, I think that what being expected by Hamas, and Hamas gained the advantage of humiliating Israel in the whole world and making Israel actually the pariah state until now. And as you can see right now, even though from military standpoint, Israel is gaining, but from the PR standpoint, Israel is losing big. And that's why they try to spend a lot of money actually try to raise their PR side.
So you're saying in a sense that the public relations, in terms of public relations, the positives are with Hamas.
With Hamas, with the Palestinian people, not with Israel. If you look at the interviews done by if you look at who give interview to the press on the Israeli side right now, there are 2 individuals at least. One is from the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu himself, and the other one is the Minister of Defense.
Yeah, IDF, yeah.
And the Chief of Staff. No more educated, fluent, eloquent people like Ephraim Halavi or, very diplomatic person. They don't consult these guys anymore because right now is the mood of war. And this type of people, they don't understand anything about the PR. What they understand is you destroy things. And Benjamin Netanyahu, even though they have animosity with each other between the Minister of Defense, because he fired the Minister of Defense earlier, but he's been put it back in place because of the pressure. They don't like each other, but they try to appear to be united, I would say, because this is the important things to be shown to the public, especially to the Israeli public, that we have to fight against the enemy and we have to stay united. Of course, with the view that now he is facing a lot of charges and he become very unpopular in the Israeli public affairs.
But surely now taking on this extremist approach, and as you said, it's not doing anything good for the image, the PR image. Surely then to come out and say and assign blame to a much smaller militant group for the bombing, I think it was one attack in a series of airstrikes on the National Hospital in Gaza, the Al-Ahli Arab Hospital, right?
Yeah.
So they've assigned blame to the Palestinians, basically, a militant group from Palestine, and they said that it was a misfired rocket from that side. Now, that's their version of the story. What doesn't help with, I would say, with the fairness of it all is that the U.S. has come out to endorse that and say that whatever Israel says is that what happened and what they claim to be the cause of events, that's the truth. That's one side of the story. Now, the other side of the story, which is perhaps the rest of the world, if you like, we're hanging on to the narrative that it was obviously from Israeli air forces. They have the capacity to carry out these airstrikes, and they deliberately targeted a hospital. And in fact, we actually the NSC put out a video recently that was sent to us from an NGO, Malaysian NGO called Cinta Gaza Malaysia. And there was this doctor, Palestinian doctor, and he was at the hospital surrounded by dead bodies. He said that the people who came there, they were actually seeking shelter because they were told that was supposed to be a safe place and would have been able to hide shelter from the bombs. But they ended up dead. So surely this is not. It does the logic behind all of this, what they're trying to arrange in terms of the narrative that they're trying to build up to improve their image. It seems to be quite having an adverse effect. It doesn't seem to be achieving anything out of this. So maybe if you could just tell me. What this further does this further damage this the PR image that they already
Well, I think
mangled?
from my point of view, I look at what is going on right now is it is not to I mean, they rely on the narrative of self-defense. But if you look at what they have done to the Palestinian people, it has exceeded the line of self-defense. It's become like a ferocious monster who try to attack and destroy the whole thing. And of course, that is right, because Benjamin Netanyahu himself, he said that we are going to eliminate Hamas. That's number one. And he went on further saying that the Hamas member walking on the street, underground, and outside Gaza is a dead man. He said that, meaning that he went on overdrive to kill it. That is number one. So that actually explains the reason why there is a continuous attack on Gaza. So right now there is a case that involves hospital. If you look at the narrative, okay, if you analyze, because Israel right now they are trying to fight many fronts of wars. Not only that they are fighting on one side is the threat from Lebanon, from Hezbollah, they also try to fight the threat from Gaza, which is coming from Hamas. And if you look at from the PR side, they're also fighting on that. So right now they're fighting on the PR side, on the idea of wars. First narrative is that is a backfire, or they call it misfire. The attack is coming from Hamas. That was the beginning. And the American bought the narrative, and they tried to sell to the world. But it seems that the world doesn't really buy the narrative. They changed the story. They say that actually under that hospital, there is a base for Hamas. There is an underground, there is a metro Gaza below that, and they store this weapon, they store this all kind of facilities and equipment belong to Hamas. So because of that, therefore, it justifies the attack. So that is the two narrative that we can see right now. Okay, so that also doesn't help, because right now Israel, the one who is controlling the war cabinet, if you look at it, all run by the fanatics. So I think one of the way, or one aspect that we have to consider in understanding what's going on right now is to study who is the war cabinet, who run Israel now. Benjamin Netanyahu, Minister of Defense, the Chief of Staff, Military Chief of Staff. This group belong to the fanatics. They control the media, meaning that they make the statement in the media about what's going on in there. They also make decision, and that decision is actually detached from the reality and what is supposed to be. And the whole world is watching, and they don't really care. Because to me, what they care most is the revenge is exacted on Hamas and on the people. The collective punishment is done. And I think that works against Israel in the future, even though we can see that they are winning in terms of the military might, in terms of the attacks that they have conducted. But in the long run, I do not know what's going to happen in order to repair the Israeli image in the whole world, not only in the Muslim world.
Can I add to that?
Please, yes.
Okay. When it comes to narratives, if you remember early on, the story about, or allegation, accusation about decapitated babies.
Yes,
right.
The same thing.
40 decapitated babies. Apart from the hospital, even Biden have had to retract his statement about decapitated babies. So again, as Dr. Ahmad pointed out, Israel is losing the PR battle because of such a thing. Because if you remember also, there are one or two tweets published by the leaders of Israel that they later on deleted because they changed the story. So that itself is proof that for us watching from outside, that you just can't believe the Israeli side's narrative. As Dr. Ahmad also pointed out, who is the spokesperson for the current government? Only two people, the defense minister and the prime minister. And no longer eloquent, intellectual kind of, diplomatic kind of people. So that itself says something.
Exactly. That itself actually tells the world that anybody in Israel included, and also around the world, the people who has the sense of humanity and justice cannot accept what has been done by the war cabinet, and especially Benjamin Netanyahu. And actually, he start using religious term now. He speak about Amalek right now. Amalek is a term used in Bible and also in Judaism. It shows the pure evil. This is referring to Hamas. And they try to portray Hamas as Amalek. Amalek is a pure evil who is destroying.
That must be destroyed.
It must be destroyed.
Right.
So that is the narrative right now. And if you look at the narrative again, before this we have the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. But right now, the narrative is Hamas-Israeli conflict or Hamas-Israeli wars. So you see that the change of word also indicate some kind of the control narrative that they try to put forward.
Right. And again on narratives, two sides of the coin, basically. Another thing that the U.S. in particular has had issues with is the death count that has been announced and released by the Palestinian Health Ministry. So essentially what happened was recently the Palestinian Health Ministry, they released a document on the deaths of they've recorded more than 7,000 Palestinian deaths, including nearly 3,000 children since the October 7th war began. Now, Biden came out saying that these numbers are unreliable because they're coming out of Palestine. Again, this doesn't do much good for their already torn image. Why is it, do you think, that the Biden administration and the U.S. continue to cast doubt over any of the narratives coming out from the other side? Surely, again, to my earlier point, how does this help with their current PR? Like, if they're trying to improve their standing with the rest of the world, they can't keep doing this. They can't keep throwing out these the stories from the other side, the version of this story from the other side.
Well, I think they're stuck in their own trap, actually. The Israeli government and even American government also, they follow suit to be trapped in their own narrative, in their own close-minded thinking. If you look at in the United States, under current the Biden administration, who advised Biden administration on Middle East right now? Who is the best person, the best mind in America advise? None. So any decision made, because why it has happened that way is because most of the Biden cabinet are the pro-Israelis. So like it or not, you have no choice but to endorse whatever Israeli say, whatever Israeli did, and what Israeli trying to do in future. You got to do that, because the whole cabinet and the majority of the cabinet is pro-Israelis. So whenever you stuck in that kind of thinking or stuck in that kind of situation, you don't have flexibility. You don't have flexibility to think outside and try to explore other option. To rely on other narrative. So what is the other narrative? For example, try to explore possibility of checking with other sources. For example, with Red Cross. Red Cross must be, updating their data, their database on who actually being killed and become the victim. And I think yesterday or last night, Hamas came up with the list of people who are dead. They have names, they have ages, they have gender, they have like status. Who are these people who are dead? They have a list. Where is it Israeli going to rely on? So you see from the PR point of view, they are not going to stand a chance of winning the PR battle because the whole world is watching the Red Cross, who is actually having a presence inside Gaza. They're also there. They also report that there are 100 and 1,000 people who are dead on a daily basis because of the attack. And sadly, the American government, because they have to rely on the narrative created in Tel Aviv or in Jerusalem, they have to follow the script. So whatever being said in Tel Aviv or in Jerusalem, it is being said in Washington. It is a very sad story for American government, I would say. Mm-hmm. They have to do it because they don't have any option. Should they rely on the right advisors? I'm sure there are so many good advisors on Middle East in the United States can tell President Biden, this is not the right way of doing things. We have to explore the options.
To that point, I think I can also add that I would call it the WMD syndrome. If you remember the weapons destruction in George
Iraq,
W. Bush administration to go to Iraq, and what does that achieve?
Yes.
In the end, there's no WMDs.
Doubling down on...
So they are trapped in their own narrative in a sense.
Yeah.
And the fact that, again, who is the advisor? Who's advising the president? Who's advising the U.S. leaders? And sadly, if you also remember, it kind of gave a blowback to the American, to the Palestinians living in America. Yeah. If you remember, one child was stabbed to death.
Oh yes.
And the mother was also stabbed but survived. So if they have not learned from their past mistake, they will never learn.
Yeah.
It's very unfortunate, and to even have to get to that point where you have an innocent child being the victim out of this. Now, perhaps to kind of bring back this issue to more of a local, national point of view, if you will, from what we have seen, the government speaking up against, being bold in its stance, speaking up against Israel, and being very firm with the stand that we are supporting Israel, right? As far as
supporting Palestine.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Let me correct. That's was a innocent mistake there. Supporting Palestine against Israel. So as far as you yourself personally, what else can be done by Malaysia, by the government, to show our support for the Palestinian plight? Or are we already doing enough? Has the government done enough? Has Anwar done enough? What else can be done?
We can explore what can be done, in my view. There are several options that we can explore. Okay, we have done humanitarian. We have done the political pressure, working together with OIC and Arab country, Arab nations. We spoke very openly and vocally the United Nations. I think in terms of the political solution of political approach, we have done that. But I think we can do more. We can do more, for example, if you look at what is going on right now, we rely on indirect approach of dealing with Israel. Perhaps we can try to have a direct negotiation or direct contact, even though we do not have any diplomatic relation. But I think we can actually having a direct contact with Israel, especially in discussion, in persuading them to see the other. Definitely, it is a quite, I would say, a far-fetched to achieve. But I think we can try to do it. That's number one. And number two, we also need to have a good advisors in the case of Israel and Middle East in Malaysia. Who advised Prime Minister in the case of? Is that being done by the professional diplomatic people in the foreign service? Is it done by the external intelligence? research division, for example? Is it done by who, basically? Done by the civil society group? So I think on the part of the government, we need to have a pure professional advisors when it comes to the Israel and the Middle East.
I think also, I think there is movement towards a direct approach, because I remember reading recently about BRICS nations
Yeah.
recognizing Palestine. BRICS nation, as you say, Brazil, or South Africa, Russia, China, and even China has recently negotiated Saudi and Iran. So I'd say there should be more players that can, apart from Malaysia, that can do the direct negotiations approach. The only question is, of course, whether we can do it collaboratively at one go, because I think it's an avenue that we should
Explore.
pursue.
Yeah. And then the other one is, I think we are I would say, the hardcore supporters of the Palestinian struggle.
Yeah.
Okay? And then we have these Israeli issues on the other side. But do we have the expert on Israeli political affairs or Israeli politics in Malaysia? Do we have that expertise? I do not call myself as an expert, but I do a lot of readings about this. But we need to develop. We need to develop the expertise in this in order to analyze objectively who they are, actually. Because it seems that in terms of research, Israel have a good research capabilities in understanding people, in understanding their culture, the strength and the weaknesses. So I think we can do the same thing, especially in developing that capacity, so that whenever in the time of need like this, they can be the point of reference for Malaysia, for us in Malaysia. Then we can make the right decision.
There is one experience I want to share. In my second visit to Israel, way back in the early 90s, actually, I visited the economic ministry. If I'm not mistaken, it's in West Jerusalem. I met up a few of the officials, and actually they are very interested to have direct contact with Malaysia. And they said so, and they said trade is important to us and also to you. Why don't we trade?
Yeah.
So that's something that people might not know.
Right.
But again, I guess this is a political decision.
Yeah.
You have to really weigh correctly where we should go. But again, alternatives needed to be explored, and this will, because in the final analysis, these Palestinians that we need to give hope, and they can see, as they say, light at the end of the tunnel, kind of. Hopefully, we can do that.
Right.
Yeah, I think Qatar is a good example, good role model that we can we can follow, because it has many contact with the group like this, with the people like this. Even though it might not like officially, but they have a contact, meaning that whenever they have something, they can just call the person and have a talk. For example, Qatar have a relationship with Al Qaeda for more than 23 years, more than 20 years. They have a contact and has been talking to Hamas for a very long time. So when there is a trouble like this, I mean, if Malaysia want to play its role at the international stage, it needs to have preparation. It needs to have a strategic positioning, thinking, like need to position Malaysia how they can play. They're not just only talking on the roadside, not just having a demonstration. You're talking about really professional play rule. And we have the people. We have people, even like yourself, who's been going through the experience of meeting with these people. They can be resource person. They can be developed even more. They have also civil society group and also the NGOs, and we have a good people who have a good access to information. But it need to be maintained, right? It need to be supported, so that whenever Malaysia has the intention of play the role, we have resource person that can refer to. I think that is a kind of a long strategy for Malaysia to or position themselves strategically at the international stage.
Right. So I would love to have this discussion go on for much longer, but I've just been told twice now by my producer that we have about 5 minutes left. Now, before we end, I really need to bring this up because you touched on being more relevant, having a more relevant role in supporting and championing the cause of Palestinians. And you touched on, it has to go beyond having just rallies and demonstrations. Now, with the recent Ministry of Education's directive, they put out a circular to schools saying that they were encouraging schools to take part and observe in the Palestinian Solidarity Week for Palestinians. Now, what seemed at first, and I think it came out of a good place, the intentions were good, but then we saw some viral images of students with replica guns, toy guns, and the most recent one was the burning of the Israeli flag by, I believe it was a school teacher. Again, these images went viral. And since then, you've got all these politicians, NGOs, some political parties coming out with statements perhaps saying, the government needs to review this, and some even calling it unnecessary, completely unnecessary, and it has to do away with these sort of solidarity weeks and involving children in these sort of political conflicts. Now, so just quickly, Dr. Ahmed, before we finish, what's your take on it? Is this helping? And of course, I think everyone would agree that if it's come to this point where you're having school children openly displaying acts, even if it's a replica of acts of violence, obviously they're not committing genocide, but they're imitating, right, the very people that they are fighting against. So what's your take on this? Has it gone too far?
Yeah, there are three things here that I can mention. Number one, we would be an ardent support of the Palestinian struggle for a very, very long time. It is okay to support that kind of Israel, shows that we care. We are good people who are supporting not only Palestinian, but we're also supportive of these refugees from many countries. That's why the world loves Malaysian. They come to Malaysia by thousand. They know that Malaysia is providing them a safe space for them to live a noble life, or I would say a respectable life. And then we are multiracial too, and can live together. I think that is our advantage. We have to show to the world that we cares. We cannot stop doing this. However, number two, we need to put as a SOP, standard operating procedure. Now, if we want to have this kind of things, there are do and don'ts, very simple things. What are the things that you can do? What are the things that you cannot do? I think it's a very simple thing. Then we can think about that. And then number three, I think burning flag is still acceptable in terms of, because people are burning flag in many parts of the world, around the world. Showing the displeasure to the certain state. I think not only happen now, I think it become an issue right now because it's involved guns. I think the burning flag is something that is still acceptable in terms of demonstration. They're doing it in many parts of the world. But whenever there are people appear is taking guns and showing, even though it's like a kind of a mock or a kind of play, but I think it's not a good exposure to children. It actually promotes the paramilitary culture. It promotes violence. And I think given Malaysia is a multiracial society, there would be a kind of niceties to be observed, I might put it. Or the sensitivity need to be,
Correct,
to be observed in order to live harmoniously in this society of this nature. Thank you.
All right. Well, that's it for now. Thank you so much, Dr. Ahmed, for your amazing and in-depth input into this issue. And I hope our viewers have benefited a lot from this, because I have. And thank you, Azman, for coming on. Thank you both for making it to this episode of Beyond the Headlines. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, on X and Facebook, and subscribe. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for all the latest videos, and especially for this episode of Beyond the Headlines for more updates.